This incident actually happened. What occurred in the past was not a figment of imagination. Researchers in France confirmed this in their books. However, the surprise is that this was not the only incident. Mysterious practices, horror, and strange phenomena spread at that time, and the result is that this phenomenon in horror films is not a myth. It really happened. It was a frightening, terrifying, and mysterious phenomenon. The people of that era lived with real fear. When night fell, everyone hid. During that night, until dawn, terror surrounded them, taking their children and daughters. The number of missing persons increased strangely. Some remained hidden without a trace, while others were found as remains and bones. The most horrifying aspect was the executioners. The townspeople confirmed and eliminated doubt with certainty that these were not ordinary people. They had surrendered their souls to witchcraft and demons, and perhaps, I say perhaps, they reaped the deadly prize. But is there an explanation? Werewolves. Dear friends, today's topic is a legend we all know, and many of you want to know its origin and the truth behind it. This topic has stirred and continues to stir controversy in any forum where it is mentioned, a subject where truth has mixed with fantasy, making it one of the most circulated topics in horror, thriller, and even romantic stories. Beings that are both human and not human, wolves that are neither wolves nor humans. Legends from ancient times have introduced us to them and the horrific crimes committed in their name. Scientific explanations have linked this phenomenon to diseases and genetic mutations, and research is still ongoing. Keep your full focus, friends, and take a deep breath, because tonight we will dive into the world of werewolves. Ready? Let's begin. Werewolves are among the most famous topics covered in narratives, stories, and films throughout the years and ages. It is a mysterious, terrifying, and controversial subject all at once. Werewolves are people who literally transform into huge, fierce wolves, thirsty for blood. The transformation into a werewolf occurs for many reasons, the most famous of which in legend, which most of us know, is being bitten or scratched, mixing the werewolf's blood with that of the person. The genetic factor also plays a role here, as some stories and films have shown that werewolves are born with this trait or ability, which usually does not appear until the person reaches puberty. Ancient stories and legends introduce the element of magic and the curse of transforming a person into a werewolf, which you will learn about in the course of the episode. The stereotypical image of size, ferocity, and strength, and the traits that perfectly apply to the man, have confined werewolves to the male-dominated society. Although some stories introduce the female factor, albeit to a rare degree, transforming into a werewolf is not an easy matter. According to the films and stories that most of us are familiar with, the person who transforms into a werewolf undergoes unbearable pain. Their bones break, set, and stretch to their current size. The person becomes naked without clothes, covered in thick hair, with sharp fangs, and totally irrational. Of course, most transformations occur only during a full moon, and they are usually killed using silver bullets exclusively, in addition to burning them, of course. Most of us know these matters due to watching numerous films where the protagonists were werewolves, or through reading stories and narratives about these legendary creatures, if it can be said. But do you know, my friends, that werewolves are not a product of modern or even medieval times? Their existence and topic date back much further than that. Keep your focus, because here is our next stop. So, my friends, the history of werewolves is not a result of modern literary works. Rather, the history of these legendary creatures extends back to ancient times, specifically to the pre-Christian era. According to many sources that have addressed this topic, such as the History Channel and Life Sciences, it is impossible to determine the first mention of the werewolf phenomenon in general. However, the first known mention or hint of humans transforming into wolves appears in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which dates back to 2100 BC. In this epic, there is a segment that discusses Gilgamesh's refusal to become the beloved of the goddess Ishtar, abandoning her after she transformed one of her former lovers into a wolf, making him an enemy to his friends, livestock, and even his dogs. However, a clear and explicit mention of what we know today about werewolves goes back to the father of history and one of the largest and most famous historians of all time, the Greek historian Herodotus. In his book Histories, he mentions a tribe he called the Nuri, who lived in the northeast of the ancient Scythian kingdom. This tribe, according to Herodotus, turned into wolves every year on a specific day. The tribe would remain in wolf form for several days before returning to their human shape. In the 2nd century BC, the famous Greek geographer and traveler Pausanias narrated a story about King Lycaon of ancient Arcadia, who transformed into a wolf after sacrificing a child in the temple of Zeus. The same story was elaborated upon by the ancient Roman poet Ovid in his epic poem Metamorphoses. In this story, the god Zeus, the god of the sky and thunder, visited King Lycaon disguised as an ordinary man. The king suspected this strange guest was one of the gods, and to resolve his doubts, he killed a child he had captured and served the child's entrails to Zeus. This god learned of the slaughtered child and was extremely angry, resulting in him transforming the king into a wolf. Another story narrated by Ovid involves an Arcadian man named Demarchus, who ate the entrails of a child offered as a sacrifice to Zeus and was transformed into a wolf for 10 years, returning to his human form afterward. According to ancient legends, those who transform must refrain from eating human flesh for 9 years to return to their natural form in the 10th year. In one of the most famous Latin prose works, Satyricon, written by the Latin author Gaius Arbiter in AD 60, there is also a description of a man transforming into a wolf. According to this book, one of the characters, whom the author named Nikersos, described the transformation as follows. When I looked at my friend, I found him shedding his clothes, piling them up, and then, urinating around his clothes in a circular manner. Suddenly, he transformed into a wolf and began howling and running into the forest. Many writers of the early Christian era also inherited the topic of transformation into a wolf in their writings, and the matter was directly linked to magic, spells, and herbs, as well as selling one's soul to the devil. Naturally, the frequency of mentions of werewolves in stories and narratives continued. For example, the book of Werewolves, published in 1860, traces the mention and existence of these creatures throughout history. Also, a novel published in 1928 titled The Wolf's Bride, A Tale from Estonia, introduced the female factor by making the heroine a werewolf. Of course, many other narratives and stories were later adapted into films that took over cinema halls and television screens. Some of these films are based on real stories, observations, and events recorded in history books about cases labeled as werewolves. There are many observations and real cases of people executed for being werewolf killers. Listen carefully. These observations and historical events are our next stop. There are numerous observations, news, and events recorded in historical documents regarding the topic of werewolves. Perhaps the most famous is the beast that terrorized the French city and was directly linked to werewolves. However, the story of the Gévaudan beast is not the only incident known concerning werewolves. Historical sources have elaborated on such incidents, most of which occurred between the 16th and 17th centuries, a period that witnessed great panic due to acts of magic and witchcraft, and many trials of individuals accused of practicing witchcraft. The same situation applied to those proven to be werewolves or vampires. All these were the result of magic, according to the beliefs of that era. Many innocent people lost their lives in what was called the witch hunts. In contrast, some individuals, particularly concerning werewolves, were indeed guilty of horrific crimes, and society was completely convinced that they were werewolves by their own confessions. We start from the year 1521 with the Frenchmen Pierre Burgot and Michel Verdun. The two men were arrested and tried for witchcraft. During the trial, the men confessed that they had sold their souls to the devil, who rewarded them with a magical ointment capable of transforming them into wolves. When transformed, the two men roamed the streets of the French city, preying on unfortunate victims who were sadly children. The men confessed to killing several children, drinking their blood, and eating their body parts, leading to their trial and execution by burning on the stake, the method used at the time to kill werewolves. We move to 1573, also in France, with a man named Gilles Garnier. This man also claimed to possess a magical ointment capable of healing wounds and bruises. Not only that, but this ointment could also transform him into a wolf. It seems that the idea of the ointment was very popular at that time, wasn't it? As with his predecessors, Gilles also killed children and ate them, and was, of course, burned alive as punishment for his horrific crimes. We move from France to Germany, specifically to the city of Bedburg, in one of the most famous werewolf stories and trials of all time. The accused was a wealthy farmer named Peter Stubby. This man terrorized his city for many years with nightly crimes, and the townsfolk would wake up to the horrors he had caused. Numerous patrols roamed the streets searching for the culprit, but to no avail until the first hints of solving the mystery began to emerge. According to a report from National Geographic, one of the participants in the search and patrols clashed with a terrifying creature resembling a massive wolf and managed to cut off its left foreleg before the beast fled into the darkness. In the following days, no crimes occurred, and the town did not witness any panic. The beast, it seemed, had been severely injured by the brave guard. The very guard encountered in the days that followed the encounter with the mysterious beast, the wealthy and well-known farmer Peter. But a strange matter caught the guard's attention. Peter's left hand was missing. Does this remind you of anything? Yes, exactly the same injury the guard inflicted on the mysterious creature. Of course, the guard inquired of Peter about what happened to his hand, and Peter told him he had cut it in an accident on his farm. The answer did not apparently convince the guard, who conveyed his suspicions and what he had seen to his companions. Consequently, the young men began to watch Peter until the night he went out hunting. The young men saw with their own eyes, according to historical documents, Peter transform into a wolf. After returning to his human form, they surrounded him and arrested him. During the trial, Peter confessed that he had made a pact with the devil, who had given him a magical belt that transformed him into a massive wolf when worn. Of course, the belt was never found, according to historical sources. Peter also confessed to killing approximately 25 people and eating their body parts, most of whom were children. Peter's trial is considered one of the most horrific trials of all time. Many historians and researchers, according to a National Geographic article, believe that the man made his confessions under severe torture and that he, Peter, was merely mentally ill, a condition unknown at the time, making him a suitable target for witch hunters and werewolf hunters, ultimately ending up bound to a wheel and being skinned alive. The matter did not stop there. All the bones in his body were broken and then cut into pieces, with these pieces burned after being hung on stakes. As a warning, his head was hung on a pole in the center of the village or town. Truly terrifying, isn't it? We move to the year 1603, and this time the protagonist is a teenage boy named Jean Grenier, who claimed responsibility for a number of murders and disappearances at the time, also claiming that he possessed a magical skin that transformed him into a wolf when worn. All the crimes he committed were during the period he transformed into a wolf. The boy's story attracted significant interest, and he was indeed arrested and heard by a jury of judges. Ultimately, the court ruled that the boy was insane and unfit, and placed him in a specialized monastery for such cases. It is worth mentioning that in France alone, between 1520 and 1630, over 30,000 cases were recorded of individuals claiming to be werewolves or having seen werewolves. It seems the matter was widespread at that time. In 1725, the topic of werewolves began to fade, but the appearance of a small boy who walked on all fours brought the subject back to attention. In the summer of that year, a small boy living alone in the wilds of northern Germany was found. Most who saw the boy or heard his story insisted he had been raised among a pack of wolves. The boy could not speak, only howl, and he would eat with his hands, refusing to sleep except on the ground. This boy's story reached King George I, who summoned him to the royal court in England. There the boy was baptized according to Christian teachings and given the name Peter. King George I and his advisors, followed by King George II, made strenuous efforts to teach Peter to speak and the proper ways of eating and behavior, but all attempts were in vain. He was given the title of Peter the Wild Boy due to his embarrassing behavior and inability to adapt to life in the royal court, and he was sent to live in the suburbs of England until his death in 1785. The mystery of this boy from the wilderness remains a true enigma to this day. Does this part remind you of anything? Yes, friends, the famous cartoon series and movie Mowgli, the Jungle Book. It seems that what we watched in our childhood was based on a true story, Strange, of course, researchers believe that what Peter suffered from was nothing but what is now known as Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, a rare neurological disorder characterized by learning difficulties and the inability to speak, facial deformities, and breathing difficulties, first discovered in 1978. Of course, over time, the frequency of werewolf sightings decreased to the point of extinction. However, on the other hand, attempts and scientific explanations for what these individuals experienced have emerged and spread regarding what was claimed to be werewolves. These scientific explanations are our next stop. So, my friends, a topic like werewolves, with the extensive circulation it has had since ancient times to modern times, necessitated the scientific community to research it and provide suitable explanations that could decode this phenomenon. Science and scientists, naturally, do not spare any effort to deny everything that has been speculated about this phenomenon, just as with other supernatural phenomena. Many explanations and theories have been proposed by scientists, most of which have a medical and psychological nature. We start with one of the most prominent of these explanations, lycanthropy. This is a rare psychological and psychiatric disorder in which the patient believes they can transform into a wolf and behaves accordingly, whether howling, walking on all fours, or attacking those around them. Most patients, according to various sources such as National Geographic and Life Sciences, believe in their ability to transform as a result of having been wolves or another type of animal in a previous life, in other words, reincarnation. These patients naturally undergo psychotherapy sessions like other mental illnesses, in addition to being treated with antidepressants and mood enhancers and other medications typically given for such conditions. Another medical condition has also been proposed as a possible explanation for these sightings: porphyria. This is another rare medical condition whose symptoms are numerous and vary according to the severity of the case. This disease primarily affects the nervous system, leading to many symptoms such as severe neuropathy, strong seizures, hallucinations, depression, extreme sensitivity to light, changes in skin color and shape, red teeth, and many other symptoms. Of course, the details of this disease and its diagnosis were not known at the time, during the period of the significant emergence of werewolf sightings. Therefore, according to Dr. Lee Illes, in a research paper published in 1963 titled On Porphyria and the Etiology of Werewolves, the sightings documented in historical records regarding werewolves may have been victims of this unknown disease at that time. Of course, this faced criticism from within the scientific community, as most sightings indicated a literal transformation of the individual into a wolf, prompting scientists to conduct further studies to propose another hypothesis or medical condition. Hypertrichosis is a genetic disorder or mutation affecting the X chromosome, causing abnormal and excessive hair growth all over the face and body, in addition to other symptoms, the most notable of which is the change in the shape and appearance of teeth. Those suffering from this disease literally embody the appearance of a wolf. Despite being a rare condition, many documented cases exist of people afflicted with this disease, perhaps the most famous being the Mexican family of 19 members, all of whom suffered from it, and also that family from Burma, documented in historical records as having 4 generations of this disease. Most affected individuals in the past were used in circus performances. Of course, we all still remember Supatra Sasupan, the 11-year-old Thai girl who entered the Guinness World Records in 2011 as the hairiest girl who suffered from hypertrichosis. So my friends, what people saw during those eras was most likely real and truly happened, and the symptoms of this disease could convincingly explain what history recorded. However, they did not explain the brutal behaviors that accompanied the physical descriptions, as those afflicted with excessive hair growth did not show any brutal or inhumane behavior. These individuals, despite the emotional burden they faced and being used as objects of display, were characterized by constant friendly smiles. So science must continue its search, and it has also proposed another theory or hypothesis to explain what happened: rabies. This disease, whose symptoms have been known since ancient times without specifying its name or source, or even its true nature, did not see treatment for its afflicted until 1880. This disease affects animals, especially dogs and wolves, turning them into rabid animals that attack everyone around them. If the disease transfers to a human, either through direct bites or the saliva of the infected animal, death may be the outcome if the appropriate vaccine and treatment are not administered. The symptoms of rabies begin with flu-like symptoms, and if the patient is not treated immediately, the symptoms rapidly progress, leading to agitation, anxiety, confusion, and hyperactivity, accompanied by excessive salivation, hallucinations, insomnia, and more. Naturally, the infected individual becomes violent and unaware of the actions they are taking. As we mentioned earlier, this may end in the death of the infected person. These symptoms could explain the strange behaviors of those accused of being werewolves. However, there is no definitive answer to this matter. Other theories have been proposed to explain the topic of werewolves, aside from the medical and psychological ones. The ergot fungus or claviceps found on wheat has come into play. This fungus, scientifically proven to cause hallucinations, disconnection from reality, poisoning, and more, may have been one of the reasons that led those communities to report strange sightings. It is worth mentioning that this fungus was one of the main explanations given to interpret what happened in the Salem witches topic and the numerous illnesses that the town witnessed attributed to witchcraft and witches according to various sources. The website How Stuff Works, which focuses on debunking scientific facts, proposed two hypotheses regarding what occurred. The first is a hybrid pack of fierce wolves or dogs. Typically, wolves do not attack humans, but the existence of a fierce and hybrid pack different from the wolves known to those communities may have contributed to the idea of savage werewolves. The other hypothesis mentioned by the site is a scientifically documented psychological phenomenon upon which researchers base their studies and hypotheses regarding all strange sightings: mass hysteria. The name explains itself, an entity or creature appearing from nowhere, leading to frequent sightings with the same characteristics and traits, often causing fear in the communities experiencing the mass hysteria. This may have afflicted European societies during that period. However, the matter was not limited to European societies in the Middle Ages. During a research journey by some researchers in Ghana in 1930, they found that the inhabitants of that area widely believed in the topic of transformation from human form to animal form. However, this time, it was not wolves that were accused, but hyenas. Yes, as you heard, hyenas. According to prevailing beliefs, these transformers are sorcerers living in lands isolated from cities and villages. It is noteworthy that the topic of transformation into animal form is not limited to just wolves, despite being the most common. According to the History Channel, Life Sciences, and others, transformations also include changing into dogs, cats, snakes, crocodiles, hyenas, and more. The Life Sciences site pointed out in an article about werewolves that most patients diagnosed with mental illnesses, dissociative personality disorder, and lycanthropy experience worsening conditions and increasing brutality, to the extent of attacking their doctors and nurses during a specific time of the month. Can you guess? Yes, during the full moon. Research studies have shown a relationship between the moon and human mood swings in general. However, there is no clear and conclusive evidence or explanation to this day regarding the relationship between the moon's fullness and the strange transformations of mentally ill patients, especially those with lycanthropy. Of course, werewolves are not the only legendary creatures that abound in history books, stories, films, and more. The list is long, topped by vampires and zombies. Vampires are mysterious, legendary creatures that also date back to ancient times, perhaps to the beginning of creation. It is a long and convoluted topic that will certainly be one of the subjects presented in one of our upcoming episodes. The same goes for the topic of zombies, beings that are both human and not human at the same time. These creatures, which we have known from films and stories portraying them as soulless, will surprise you with what you will discover about their origin and the reason or condition that led to the spread of their globally known story as zombies. This topic will also be under the spotlight in one of our upcoming episodes soon. The commonality between werewolves, vampires, and zombies is their widespread circulation in horror, thriller, and even comedic and romantic films, occasionally portrayed as heroes and at other times as pure evil. The question now is, in light of what we witness from genetic mutations and the evolution of some diseases and viruses, can fiction become reality? That is, Can we actually witness real werewolves or real vampires as a result of the evolution of the medical conditions associated with these creatures, or perhaps due to unethical and inhumane experiments? As for zombies, the entire world has witnessed a significant number of young people turning into zombies, not due to an attack or mysterious virus or nuclear radiation or anything else, but due to a far greater epidemic: drugs. Recently, social media and television screens have been flooded with videos of young people wandering aimlessly, acting irrationally and behaving violently, attacking passers-by and causing destruction without any awareness of their actions. More than that, journalistic reports confirm that these young people, in the midst of their intoxication, did not feel pain at all, no matter the cause. Some even inflicted severe injuries upon themselves, bleeding profusely and completely oblivious to their pain, just like the zombies in famous films. The reason, unfortunately, is a type of drug known as alpha PVP. The result of this toxic substance's effect on the youth, leading to a loss of their rationality, is astonishing. And the similarity of their condition to that of movie zombies led to this drug being referred to as the zombie drug. This inexpensive, highly potent, and dangerously effective drug has drawn considerable attention, especially after an incident in which a user of the zombie drug bit a small child in one of Cairo's neighborhoods in 2017, which was the main cause of this drug's notoriety across both the Arab and Western worlds. Due to this drug, the world has seen real zombies in every sense of the word. So my friends, will the same apply in the near future to werewolves and vampires? Will we witness the extraordinary in this world of wonders we live in, and will fiction truly become reality? Perhaps I should also say here that we have fallen many times in our lives and thought that it was over and that our lives had become miserable. Just a matter of days, then we stood up and returned to the battle of life. You may have forgotten, but do not underestimate that rise. Remember that it was also a wonder when you succeeded, and be certain that in this world of wonders, everything is possible. So no matter what happens, do not lose courage. As someone once said, if you must fall, have the courage and bravery to fall forward, not backward. Who knows, perhaps when you fall this time, you will see before you what you have not seen in your best days. And with that, your new chapters will begin. So, my friends, this is what we had in store about werewolves. Those legendary creatures that have left an imprint on human memory since ancient times and until today. The undisputed heroes of horror stories and films. Legends have mentioned their existence, with numerous sightings opening the floodgates of questions. Are werewolves real, roaming among us? And were the individuals who committed horrific crimes under the pretense of being werewolves truly werewolves? Or was ignorance of mental health issues at that time what turned them into victims of an ignorant society dominated by superstitions and myths? Do you believe that these hybrid cases were medical conditions that science has successfully explained and labeled? Or were they merely a hybrid pack of ferocious wolves that caused all this terror and bloodshed? Will science reach a conclusion on these cases, or will they remain among the mysteries of history and our present world? And most importantly, what do you think awaits us in the future? Will these cases reappear due to strange and dangerous drugs that easily alter human nature, waking up one day in a world like the one we have seen in horror fantasy films? No one knows. No one,